Hey everybody, it's me, Stacy, and this is Molly. We start out our training session with a nice 2-mile walk in harness. We're still doing a lot of ground driving and just getting her, acclimated to surroundings. As I've restated a number of times in my training videos previously, she's very sensitive and a little bit spooky at times. So just doing repetitive things in our training that expose her to different sounds and sights, I think it's helping quite a bit. Where in a situation like today, where I introduced her to the cart and orienting her to the sounds of the cart and the sights of the cart, she probably would have bolted had she not had as much groundwork as we've been doing with her in terms of sound exposure and confidence course training and ground training and just bonding and positive reinforcement. If you watch carefully, you'll notice that when she's introduced to something new, like raising the shafts and the sound of the metal clanking, she's uncertain. She'll kind of pin her ears a little bit. She'll shake her head. She'll walk off, even though I've asked her to hoe and stand. And she will be a lot more hesitant to do what I'm asking her to. So here she's really brave and she's stepping over the shafts. There was a previous video where I just worked her over a pole a number of times, just back and forth over a pole. She's uncertain with her feet, like where she's placing them. I think she is definitely more of a flight than a fight type of horse, and is more prone to stepping away from the scary stuff or the pressure, and therefore she's a lot slower in her training. And I do tell people who bring horses here for training that every horse is an individual, and it's going to really depend on their ability to learn or to settle into a job. And some horses just aren't suited for certain jobs, and we're still discovering whether Molly is going to be able to do harness work at all. I know for sure that she's going to progress in her saddle training. She already has been, and she does really well on trails, and she under saddle is a very confident horse. She's a different horse. But when it comes to harness work and she's out front and there's a lot more distance between myself, who's her herd leader in this instance, and situations like this, she's much more prone to the flight mode. And I'm going to continue to assess her and expose her to this every day and see if she improves. Our session today with the cart, this was her first time, so I didn't expect perfection. Everything about horses, whether they are a really quiet horse or a sensitive horse like Molly, I'm looking for progress, not for perfection in training. And I try to maintain as light a hand in the lines as possible, but sometimes for her own safety, I have to apply pressure so that she knows I'm still there and what I'm asking. And I'm asking her not to bolt. I'm asking her not to have that flight mode. I'm trying to keep her brain between her ears, so to speak, because when they get in that flight mode, everything else, that thinking capability seems to just go right out the window. And I don't need her to be, hitched to the tire or hitched to the stone sled and lose her capability of thinking and her capability of listening to me. For her safety, she could get tied up in the trace and chains, get herself wrapped up in something and can get herself hurt. And that's the last thing I'd want to do. So if the alternative is applying a little pressure on the bit through the lines, then I'm going to do that just for her safety. But as you can see, for the majority of the video, the lines are loose and I'm using my voice more than I am ever using the lines. So again, we just do circles and circles around the cart, and I bang the shafts, I lift the shafts, I touch her legs with the shafts. After all of that, I finally hitch her to the stone sled. Now, with the stone sled, I have been leading her in hand, and she's been dragging the sled. So today was the first time she actually was out front using her brain and listening to cues and commands and applying all that groundwork that we did over the last month and a handful of days, and applying that to pulling the sled. She's a lot more confident now that she's pulled the sled in hand. And I've said before that regressing in training and backing up and repeating training doesn't mean that you're not progressing in training. And I think that this is a really great example that just because we've been ground driving and we do 2 miles a day, and just because she's been exposed to the sound of the sleds dragging behind, does not mean that she isn't going to be able to move forward in her training. It's just that she takes it a little slower. And just because I did it in hand at first doesn't mean that she's not capable of it. It just means she's learning a different way and a different length of time.